everyone, welcome back to a new video. I hope you're having a lovely day. Today I'm just going to bring you guys along on my illustrating with markers process. If you follow me on my social media, you'll know that I have been doing a new series on like drawing different flowers as their like nymphsonas or flower nymphs personas. So I did this one, the first one, which was Lily of the Valley. I also did sunflowers. I have also done forget-me-nots and lilies, and actually for today's video I'm going to be doing another lily, but I'm doing a spider lily, which if you don't know what spider lilies look like, they look like this, and they're so insane and cool, and I'm like, every time I see them, I'm like, nature is amazing. How does nature make this? And also, I have been really into Demon Slayer recently, and they always have a really beautiful shot of like these spider lilies in the ending song of each episode, and yeah, spider lilies it is. So my first step when working on illustrations with markers, I just kind of do the initial sketch in pencil, and then I go over that initial sketch with like a heavier hand so that those lines are darker and more, you know, just more intense, because afterwards I use a putty eraser. Also, sorry that most of this was out of focus. The rest of the video is fine, I promise. Yeah, so then I go in with a putty eraser and kind of erase the really light, faint sketch lines. But because I went heavy-handed with the line art, that remains after I use the putty eraser. Because the putty eraser just removes like excess pencil, so the faint lines will go, but the line art stays on the paper, which is great. In previous marker videos, I know that I've used a colored pencil for the line art, but recently I've been just using a normal pencil because I normally go in with colored pencils on top of the markers. So I just felt like it was a bit of, you know, a bit of a waste to cover up pencil with marker. I don't know. I'm just trying new things, you know? So then I got out my markers and I picked out what colors I was going to use. I have a little like spreadsheet with all of the markers from that set on there with their reference numbers and letters, so it's easy to pick out. And I have this like scrap piece of paper where I put down all of my color palettes. It's also where I experiment and see what colors will look like when I layer them and stuff like that. So yeah, it's just my like tester sheet before I go into the real thing. Got all my colors, I know what they look like on paper, I know what they look like with each other, so then I put in my little plastic protection paper thing underneath my piece of paper, and that basically just avoids bleed onto the next piece of paper. And I go in with my lightest colors for each element. So the lightest skin tone color that I'm going to be using today, I will go in with a flat layer of that first. And the way that I use markers is I just do a lot of build up and a lot of layers. It's mainly how I use watercolors as well, is I go in with light shades over and over again and just build up that color. And markers are really good for that. They like, I'd say for maybe 2 or 3 layers, they'll build up really nice colors. I, of course, have darker colors of each marker to create deeper shadings and higher contrasts. I went in, did the skin tones, and then I went in with the hair color, the lightest version of the hair color. I also went in and did her little sort of strappy bralette thing. I am aware that her like upper torso is a bit too long. It's all like I was looking at this with a very intense perspective so that my head didn't pop onto the camera, so I unfortunately missed that perspective. So apologies for that, but I still like her. So yeah, I added the flat colors for every element. That also included like the eye color, which I went with like a little green for, you know, like a hint to the color of the stems, which are green. So, and also green and red just, I think, look nice together. Green and oranges, which are, you know, complementary colors. Yeah, once I've got the flats down, I go in with the same colors that I use for the flats and start building up the darkest areas. So I'll use this as like the first layer of shadows, and at first it's probably not going to show up very much, but Once you start building up, it will start being a little bit more noticeable. It'll start building up the contrast. And once I feel like the colors aren't building up anymore, I'll start using the darker markers. So I did all of the shadows. I basically just plan out where the shadows are going to go with the lighter markers. And then once I'm confident that I know where all my shadows are going, I'll go in with the darker markers and use the lighter marker to blend it out. So I always have like 2 markers in my hand so that I add the darker color, and then immediately after I go in with the base color and just kind of blend that out. This is like the best way that I found to sort of blend out markers, is to go back and forth between the new color and the color underneath it so that they blend into each other nicely. And the same goes to the hair. This is how I blend the sort of hair to create these highlights, is that I go in with the darker marker in all of the dark areas and then leave out the highlighted areas, and those just become sort of like a nice highlight. Also, forgot to mention, I am using my Ohuhu markers in today's video, and the Splashy sketchbook from ArtGecko. This is the sketchbook where I've just been doing all of my flower nymph drawings in this series, and I'm probably just gonna like fill up the whole sketchbook with this series, and I think that'll be a really cool little book to have. So those are the materials I'm using, and I'm also going to be using my Faber-Castell Polychromos pencils. But basically everything that I use in all my videos is always listed in the description box. So once I'm kind of happy with the blend of all of the shadows and all the color, the base color layer basically, I go in with like any finer details that require markers. So in this case, it was all these really like crazy antenna-like petals that spider lilies have, that I have no idea what they're meant to do, but I think they are so cool. And so I kept adding more shadows and stuff, and when I was happy with, you know, the contrast that the markers allowed me to get to, so like this is as far as I think the markers will get me in terms of darkness without, you know, compromising the blending, I went in and I added my little background color. I've been doing like this sort of just a square background color for all of my flower nymph illustrations. And yeah, just make sure that that's nice and sort of blended as much as it could be. And then once the background is put down, I go in with my Acrylograph paint pens, my Acrylograph paint pen in white, and I just kind of make a note of where I want all the like highlights to go. These pens are awesome because they are paint pens, so they will show up on anything, no matter how dark the background is. So I use these a lot in my marker illustrations, especially for fixing mistakes. They're awesome for that. But yeah, I just kind of make a note for now of where all these little, I don't know what they're called, but the little buds at the end of all of these antennas, petals, are gonna be. Yeah, they have like little seeds at the top of them. I know that they're not seeds, they're like the pollen, but anyway. Once that was done, I went in with my coloring pencils, and honestly, you don't really need something as fancy as my Faber-Castell Polychromos. It's just that these are my favorites that I've had for years, so these are the ones I always use. But truly, any coloring pencil will do. So I just go over the markers with my pencil. I sometimes add like a little line art to the piece with a color that complements the color palette. So because everything was very red in this piece, I went in with sort of like a mauvey red color to add extra strands of hair and some line art here and there to like create more contrast between the character and the background. And I'll also use my pencils to add like extra shadows or extra blush to the face. I lightly use the pencil to create like a blended highlight or some blended blushes. Even sometimes I'll just use my finger to smudge it a little bit if I notice that the texture is too grainy. But I actually really like the look of the grainy texture on the pencils because it makes it look like a traditional drawing, and I really enjoy it when you can tell the texture of the paper on the drawing. So basically add in all of the tiny details that I can't really achieve with markers because of the thick tips. Even with the brush markers, the Ohuhu brush markers, there's only so much you can go with how thin you make the marker look. Like they are just quite thick. So all these tiny minuscule details like eyelashes and the eyeliner, the hairs on the eyebrows, etc., I normally do those with my coloring pencils, just like a really sharp coloring pencil. So I go in with my black pencil and I add in all of these details, which is probably my favorite part of actually illustrating anything, but also with markers, is adding all these little details that really make everything come together. I feel like up until this point, the illustrations always look really flat, really two-dimensional, and just really unfinished. So I'm always really eager to get onto the coloring pencil stage of the illustration. So using the black, I go into like the darkest areas of the illustration and really darken up those true blacks. And this basically just adds a lot more contrast and fixes all of the values in the illustration so that things look less flat. If you ever look at your drawing and feel like it looks really flat or two-dimensional, it's probably because it lacks like a difference in values. So adding more highlights and more shadows will generally fix that issue. And you can really tell like a difference in a drawing with different values because it'll just look lively, you know, more like it's alive. I'm adding darker areas, adding some blush here and there with a light pink, also adding the eyebrows onto her face, and yeah, just kind of fleshing out this character. I know that I said this isn't a markers illustration, which it is, but I love mixing media, and you guys know that. So anything markers or any medium that I draw with, I normally go in with like a bunch of other materials at the end for the details because I think that it looks cool. I like the markers look for the blended areas, but then I like to mix in the grainy, unblended colors with the pencils. I just think it looks neat. I went in with my Archer and Olive Acrylograph White paint pen again and added a bunch of extra details like on her bralette, and I went over with some really, really intense highlights on her hair, again, to really up the contrast. And then I went in with my pencil and just kind of did some line art on all of the little stems. And of course, you guys know me, I love me some sparkles, so I just added some like little sparkles around her with the paint pen again. I also used this paint pen to add like eye shines and shines on the face generally, like the really, really intense highlights. And that was pretty much it. I just kind of keep messing around with it until I feel like it looks finished. And that's it. That's our spider lily flower nymph. I think she looks really cute, but also like a really powerful warrior. She looks really cool and menacing, like she could kick your butt, but she's really nice while she does it, you know? I hope you enjoyed. I hope you enjoyed coming along and illustrating with me today. If you guys want to keep seeing the rest of the series, I have a lot more flowers lined up for this illustration series, so make sure to follow me on my social media to see the rest. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely day, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye bye!